Hello, everyone. This is so exciting to be connecting with you from Kenya. Thank you so much for joining WCN's Spring Expo 2020 online. It means so much to my team and I here in Kenya. And please know that we've been thinking of you and your loved ones, and we hope that you're all well and safe. I was born and raised in Kenya, but I didn't really fall in love with Grevy zebra until I had the privilege of working at Lewa Wildlife Conservancy, where I was studying Grevy zebra and their habitat. There was a territorial male Grevy zebra that I used to see on a pretty much daily basis because I think my house was in his territory. And I had quiet moments when I would just switch off the engine and watch him, and I wasn't studying him. I was just with him. And he had this very wise and gentle presence. He was strength, beauty, and spirit all bound into one animal. And that's when I realized that my life's work was going to be dedicated to Grevy zebra. And in 2007, I co-founded the Grevy Zebra Trust. Grevy zebra are endangered. There are just over 3,000 Grevy zebra left in the wild. And although their population has stabilized, any escalation in threat could be a disaster for their long-term survival. They are threatened by loss of grazing habitat due to land degradation, restricted access to water because livestock are occupying water throughout the day, and in some of the more remote areas that we're working, poaching for subsistence meat. And it's absolutely critical that we sustain our investment in our teams on the ground. We cannot afford to lose an entire species, and we cannot afford further degradation of this incredible ecosystem. The Grevy Zebra Trust puts people at the front and center of all its work. And this is because the long-term survival of Grevy zebra depends on its ability to coexist with people living in this landscape. All the work that we are doing helps to protect other species and the ecosystem and improves the livelihoods of the communities in this landscape. I'm going to tell you about how we're monitoring Grevy zebra and how we're supporting them during times of crisis, how we are addressing land health, and finally, how we are responding to this COVID-19 pandemic. If you compare the Grevy zebra and the plain zebra, you can see that there's actually quite a lot of differences. So the Grevy zebras are like the Clydesdales of the zebra world. And they're very tall. They have these fine stripes and these beautiful white bellies. The stripes don't go under the belly. They have a brown nose and these huge ears, which are their most beautiful and distinctive feature. They live in semi-arid areas in northern Kenya and in Ethiopia. 95% of their population is in Kenya, and only 0.1% of it is falling within formerly protected areas. The foundation of the Grevy Zebra Trust is our incredible team. Our family is made up of diverse communities, the Samburu, the Rendille, the Turkana, and represented within that are women, warriors, and elders. And they have this incredible network that they expand the reach of conservation through their families, through their extended community. And so all people in this landscape are really rallying for Grevy zebra and reporting to our team when they've seen them and how they are. We have more than 55 people who are employed to collect data on Grevy zebra. And this is a long-term data set that is really reflecting the health of the Grevy zebra populations that we are working to conserve. And importantly, when they're out on patrols, our team are the eyes and ears on the ground that tell us real-time information. They tell us the status of grazing, water, and the resources that Grevy zebra depend on. And that's when we know if we need to intervene to help them during times of crisis. Foals are the most vulnerable demographic in a Grevy zebra population. And that's because their mothers, when they're lactating, have to access water at least every other day. And so they're making much more frequent journeys to water. Sometimes these journeys can be from very far away because grazing lands in dry areas can be a long way from water. And so securing that access to water is critical for the survival of foals and for the species as a whole. And I want to tell you a story about how our Grevy zebra warriors secured access, legal access for Grevy zebra to this water trough. This is a water trough that belongs to a community called Tirkamo, and it's much closer to the grazing area than their traditional water source that the Grevy zebra use. And so the community were reluctant to share this resource with Grevy zebra, but through multiple outreach sessions, our warriors convinced the community to start sharing this resource. And then they went a step further and they actually registered Grevy zebra as a legitimate user of that water source. So in the association that governs water, when they have meetings, Grevy zebra is another stakeholder and they have to consider the needs of Grevies during those meetings. We are having more frequent droughts in the landscape, and that's because the land is degraded, and so when we do receive rainfall, we're losing about 80% of it to runoff and evaporation. And during these times is when Grevy zebra lose condition, and we cannot afford to lose a single Grevy zebra. And so together with the Kenya Wildlife Service and other partners, we've developed guidelines for supplementary feeding. We supply hay and we identify feeding sites that are along corridors that Grevy zebra are using to access water. So when they come along these corridors, they find the hay and they're able to eat it. And this has been incredibly successful to date. We've had several years where we've been able to intervene and sustain the health of Grevy zebra during these terrible times. But this is a very short-term solution. We need to be looking much further ahead and investing in the future. And that's why we have a very big focus on land health. Grass is fundamental to life in northern Kenya. Without grass, there will be a decline in prey species. And with a decline in prey species, large carnivores will be forced to predate on livestock. And that increases human-wildlife conflict. So addressing land health is key to conservation in northern Kenya. One of the reasons land degradation has escalated in recent years is because livestock are not moving like they used to. There's overgrazing by small stock, sheep and goats, because people are no longer as nomadic as they were. They're living much more sedentary lifestyles. And so we have to be much more intentional about providing recovery time for plants. And that means planning. And the way that we can do that is by dividing land into blocks, no physical boundaries, just natural boundaries such as roads, rivers, hills, and having livestock grazing in one block while other blocks are left to recover. And this is especially important during the rainy season when plants are growing. Recovery time is all very well, but it's not going to work in areas where there's tons of bare soil, where plants simply cannot establish because the soil is bare and capped. And we are using another tool, which is using the hooves, the dung, and the urine of livestock, which are a great resource in this landscape. And the livestock are going out grazing during the day and then coming back to an enclosure at night. And they break up the soil with their hooves. They fertilize it with their dung and their urine. And this is an amazing treatment for bare ground. And the results are amazing. It's the combination of recovery time and reinvigorating bare ground that is going to lead to productive land, which will in turn lead to a resilient ecosystem and a resilient community. And critical to all of this is the community coming together around a common vision. So we're working hard with the community to understand how do they want their lives to be and what needs to be in place to sustain that far into the future. And of course, it always comes back to grass. Grass has become central and foremost the issue that communities are trying to now address. It also takes leadership, and having leadership from women, from elders, and from warriors, so that everybody is working together towards the same goal. And that's the only way that we can scale using this approach. One thing that we had not anticipated this year was the outbreak of desert locusts in northern Kenya. The locusts have bred up in the Middle East and flown across to the Horn of Africa. And at this point, we don't actually know what impact they're going to have on Grevy zebra and its habitat. But it's definitely something that we feel is going to be a recurring phenomenon. Just because global climate has changed, and so conditions are favorable for the breeding of the desert locust. And so we're going to have to incorporate this into our planning going forward, based on how the situation unfolds the rest of this year. Like all of you, we are now facing the COVID-19 pandemic in Kenya. And our priority has been to make sure that our team and our communities stay as safe as possible. And together with the Waso Lions, Save the Elephants, and other partners, we've been able to support a charity called the Communities Health Africa Trust, CHAT, which is a healthcare organization. And they have mobilized their community healthcare providers across the landscape in northern Kenya. And they're able to screen community members for COVID-19, for fever, and also to provide awareness on best practice, including physical distancing and sanitizing hands, etc. The Grevy Zebra Trust also has a reusable sanitary pad project, and this has really shifted gears now in the wake of this pandemic. We have now started producing protective masks for the community. We have a good stock of sanitary pads, so those are fine. We can still distribute those. But now we're using the material that we normally reserve for the pads to make these masks. And these will be given out for free to community members. And we're hoping to produce around 700 a week and protect our teams and also the communities that they're working with. During this crisis, we're also anticipating a rise in poaching. And this is due to the economic fallout from this pandemic, especially with the collapse of the tourism industry. And so keeping our teams on the ground is absolutely critical for the protection of Grevy zebra and other wildlife. We work in some very remote areas, and there is no tourism here because of the inaccessibility and in some cases because of security issues. And so in these areas, we've really been focusing on the intrinsic value of Grevy zebra, how people feel about the animal, their emotional attachment and their cultural attachment to this species. And we believe that this is something that needs to continue very strongly, not just in remote areas, but across the range of this species. Our rangelands program is also building on the local economy. And this is something that we really need to put more energy into. Because having a strong local economy enables the community to withstand these shocks of things like COVID-19. They will be able to get through living off their livestock, living off the land, and not depending on external income. And so this is something that we really want to continue focusing on as we move forward. And once we're through the other side of this pandemic, we will really step up our efforts to make sure this becomes a priority for all of our partners. Sustaining investment in Grevy zebra conservation and the people that are on the front line protecting Grevy zebra is absolutely critical. Not only does it protect this endangered species, but also the ecosystem upon which it and many other wildlife species depend. I never thought in my time at Grevy Zebra Trust that we would see these incredible events that have taken place. Locusts, droughts, and now COVID-19. But because of my amazing team, I feel that the Grevy Zebra Trust is incredibly resilient, and we are going to prevail. We are going to keep protecting Grevy zebra. And I'm looking forward to welcoming all of you to Kenya once things return back to normal. Thank you so much for your support. Please know that we are walking alongside you through this pandemic. Be well and stay safe. And if you would like to connect with us over the coming months, please reach out. And you can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram to find out what's going on in the field. Thank you.